The golden age of television was full of unforgettable shows, but few left the kind of lasting impression that the Big Valley did. From 1965 to 1969, it brought together a powerhouse cast, delivering drama, grit, and heart through the lives of the Barkley family. It was more than a Western. It was a showcase of complex characters, incredible performances, and star power that made it one of the most beloved series of its time. But behind the iconic roles and polished Hollywood appearances lay deeply personal stories filled with heartbreak, private battles, and final chapters many never saw coming. Today, we're looking back at 14 cherished actors from the Big Valley who are no longer with us, honoring their contributions, unraveling the emotional journeys behind the scenes, and remembering the legacies they left behind. Richard Long as Jared Barkley. Richard Long brought poise and precision to the role of Jared Barkley, the eldest son and lawyer in the Big Valley. Calm, articulate, and morally grounded, Jared was the character who often de-escalated tension, resolved family disputes with reason, and upheld the law with integrity. His silver tongue and strong moral compass made him a fan favorite, a man who could settle a gunfight with a closing argument. But behind the scenes, Richard Long's life was marked by deep emotional turmoil, loss, and a tragic decline. Born on December 17, 1927 in Chicago, Illinois, Richard McCord Long was the oldest of 3 children. His early years were shaped by a fascination with film and performance, and after attending Hollywood High School and Northwestern University, he was discovered by a Warner Brothers talent scout. He made his screen debut in 1946 opposite Orson Welles in Tomorrow is Forever, and quickly became a contract player for the studio, often cast as a romantic lead or earnest young hero in post-war dramas and adventure films. In 1954, he married Susan Ball, a rising starlet and Lucille Ball's second cousin. Their union seemed promising, 2 young, beautiful stars with Hollywood futures ahead. But just over a year later, Susan tragically died of cancer at age 21. The emotional devastation of losing her left a permanent scar on Long, who threw himself into work to cope. Despite his grief, he continued landing prominent roles in film and television, including in The Twilight Zone, 77 Sunset Strip, and Bourbon Street Beat, where he reprised his role as Detective Rex Randolph. By the time he joined the Big Valley in 1965, Long had earned respect as a seasoned actor, though personal demons were beginning to emerge. Behind his professional exterior, he battled alcoholism. Crew members noted frequent mood swings, missed cues, and unpredictable behavior that stood in contrast to his composed character. His second marriage to model and actress Mara Corday was long but strained. Though the couple had 3 children, insiders described periods of separation, tension, and rumors of infidelity. Some even claimed the death of their mutual friend Natalie Wood in 1981 reopened old wounds, though Long had already passed by then. Following the Big Valley, Long starred in the sitcom Nanny and the Professor, 1970 to 1971, which enjoyed moderate success. But by then, his health had begun to deteriorate. Years of alcohol abuse, combined with the physical toll of stress and emotional suppression, weakened his heart. He collapsed from a heart attack on December 21, 1974, just 4 days after turning 47. Richard Long left behind a complicated legacy, a respected television figure with a promising career, haunted by grief, addiction, and unspoken sorrow. Though his life ended too soon, his performances, particularly as Jared Barkley, remain a testament to the quiet strength he could summon, even when his own world was falling apart. Barbara Stanwick as Victoria Barkley. When Barbara Stanwick joined the Big Valley in 1965 as Victoria Barkley, she wasn't just playing the fierce, commanding matriarch of a sprawling frontier family. She was embodying a role she had unknowingly prepared for her entire life. At 58 years old, with over 3 decades of Hollywood acclaim already behind her, Stanwick brought unmatched gravitas, control, and emotional depth to the role. Victoria Barkley's steel spine and maternal wisdom felt lived in, real, because much of it came from Barbara herself. Born Ruby Catherine Stevens on July 16, 1907, in Brooklyn, New York, her life began with unimaginable hardship. At just 4 years old, her mother was killed in a streetcar accident, and shortly afterward, her father abandoned the family. Ruby and her siblings were separated and raised in foster homes and by relatives, often facing neglect and abuse. She dropped out of school in the 8th grade and supported herself as a wrapper at a department store and later as a Ziegfeld Follies showgirl. It was during this time that she adopted the stage name Barbara Stanwick, reinventing herself with a fierce independence that would define both her life and career. Stanwick rose quickly through the ranks of early Hollywood. She earned 4 Academy Award nominations for Best Actress and was one of the few women to maintain top billing across genres, working with directors like Frank Capra, Cecil B. DeMille, and Billy Wilder. Off-screen, however, her life was far less glamorous. Her first marriage to actor Frank Fay, an alcoholic known for his violent temper, ended in bitterness. Together, they adopted a son, Dion, whom Barbara would later become estranged from. Dion accused her of being emotionally distant and controlling, a sharp contrast to the warmth she exuded in her most iconic roles. Her second marriage to actor Robert Taylor began as a publicity-driven studio pairing, but it lasted nearly 12 years. Though seen as one of Hollywood's golden couples, it was plagued by infidelities on both sides and a fundamental emotional disconnect. Stanwick never remarried, often citing that she preferred solitude to the complications of romantic entanglement. Known for her perfectionism and command on set, she sometimes clashed with co-stars and crew. Anecdotes from the Big Valley reveal she once dismissed a makeup artist mid-scene for violating her boundaries, a testament to her rigid professionalism and refusal to be crossed. Yet those who earned her trust described her as fiercely loyal, especially to younger actors whom she mentored behind the scenes. Stanwick was a heavy smoker for most of her life, beginning in childhood. Combined with years of exposure to smoke and special effects chemicals on set, it led to chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, in her later years. Despite declining health, she remained mentally sharp and continued to act occasionally in television, earning an Emmy for The Thornbirds in 1983. Barbara Stanwick died on January 20, 1990, at the age of 82 from congestive heart failure and complications related to her respiratory illness. She never reconciled with her son. Though she left behind a fortune estimated at $10 million, she died alone, never remarried, with no close surviving family. Peter Breck as Nick Barkley. Peter Breck's portrayal of Nick Barkley in the Big Valley was nothing short of electrifying. As the hot-headed, fiercely loyal middle son of the Barkley clan, Nick was all passion and raw emotion, a man who led with his heart and never backed down from a fight, whether it was to protect his family or defend justice. Breck's performance added a volatile energy to the show, and audiences loved him for it. But the same intensity that made him so magnetic on screen often came at a heavy price behind the scenes. Born Joseph Peter Breck on March 13, 1929, in Rochester, New York, he was the son of a jazz musician and spent much of his youth moving between cities. He attended the University of Houston and initially studied English and drama. His acting career began on the stage before transitioning to television, where he landed early roles on shows like Maverick, 77 Sunset Strip, and The Outer Limits. His performance in Black Saddle, 1959 to 1960, where he played a gunfighter-turned-lawyer, earned him significant attention and showcased his ability to combine inner turmoil with charismatic strength. When Breck was cast as Nick Barkley in 1965, he threw himself into the role with complete dedication. He was a firm believer in method acting and would often remain in character between takes. This dedication sometimes became disruptive. He once reportedly got into a physical altercation with a fellow actor who insulted the character of Nick, not realizing Breck had blurred the lines between fiction and reality. Crew members later recalled how his intensity could become overwhelming, and some found him difficult to work with due to his refusal to break character. Off-camera, Breck married dancer Diane Bourne in 1960, and the couple had one son, Christopher. But even in his personal life, Breck's controlling and emotionally distant behavior was noted by those close to him. Friends suggested he had trouble separating the persona of Nick Barkley from his real self. The family experienced tragedy when Christopher was diagnosed with leukemia and died in his early 30s, a loss that devastated Peter and reportedly drove him into deeper isolation. After The Big Valley ended in 1969, Breck struggled to find roles that matched his previous success. He acted in low-budget horror films and obscure European productions, such as The Sword and The Sorcerer and Benji films. He frequently clashed with directors over creative control and script changes. Though he never stopped working, his star slowly dimmed in the eyes of Hollywood. In the 1980s, Breck relocated to Vancouver, British Columbia, where he opened an acting school and taught students who admired his commitment and intensity. But in his later years, Breck was diagnosed with dementia. The disease gradually robbed him of his sharp mind and kept him away from public appearances. His wife Diane later revealed that, although he was no longer able to sign autographs or attend events, he still enjoyed receiving fan letters and remained aware of the affection people had for his work. Peter Breck passed away on February 6, 2012, at the age of 82 after a long hospitalization due to illness. His legacy remains etched into television history as the embodiment of a rugged, emotionally charged Western hero. Yet for those who knew him well, his life was also a story of artistic obsession, emotional distance, and a slow, quiet retreat from the fame he once embraced with full force. Douglas Kennedy as Sheriff Fred Madden. Douglas Kennedy's commanding portrayal of Sheriff Fred Madden in The Big Valley brought a sense of calm authority to the dusty streets of Stockton. With his towering frame, square jaw, and unmistakable voice, he embodied the quintessential lawman, a figure of justice who brought order with a stern look and steady hand. But off-screen, Kennedy was not the composed sheriff he played. Instead, he was a man caught in a spiral of personal turmoil, professional disappointment, and quiet decline. Born Douglas Richards Kennedy on September 14, 1915, in New York City, he attended Amherst College and later studied acting at the University of Southern California. He served in the U.S. Army during World War II as a major in the Signal Corps, earning commendations for his service. After the war, Kennedy returned to Hollywood and quickly found a niche in the post-war boom of westerns and action serials. With over 190 screen credits to his name, he became a staple of 1950s television and B-movies, often cast as either the steadfast hero or the steely-eyed villain. Kennedy's breakthrough came through a series of roles in popular serials such as The Lone Ranger, Perry Mason, Maverick, and Gunsmoke. At one point, he was considered for lead roles in several high-profile westerns, but never quite broke through to leading man status in major studio pictures. By the early 1960s, his roles were becoming increasingly minor, and he struggled to adapt to a changing Hollywood landscape that was moving away from the genre that had once defined his career. Behind the scenes, Kennedy's life was marred by a long and public battle with alcoholism. His drinking became a topic of concern on multiple sets, including The Big Valley, where he was known to arrive late or need cue cards to remember lines. Fellow actors and crew members noted a decline in his focus and temperament, and although he was generally well-liked, his unreliability began to outweigh his talent. Casting agents, once eager to book him for his strong presence, began to distance themselves. His marriage to Isabel Russell was reported to be deeply strained. Though the couple had a son, Douglas Kennedy, Jr., the family was often separated by Kennedy's work and behavior. Gossip columns at the time hinted at extramarital affairs, one of which allegedly resulted in a paternity lawsuit during a film shoot in Arizona. Although the matter never reached court, it caused enough stir within the industry to further harm his reputation. By the time he appeared as Sheriff Madden in the Big Valley in 1965, Kennedy was no longer the actor he once was. His performances, though still imbued with natural authority, were brief and sporadic. He was often cast in background roles that required little emotional range but capitalized on his physical presence. Still, to longtime fans of the Western genre, he remained a familiar and comforting face, one that brought echoes of an earlier, simpler era of American television. Douglas Kennedy died of cancer on August 10, 1973, in Honolulu, Hawaii, at the age of 57. His final years were spent in relative obscurity, far from the limelight he once occupied. He was buried at the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific, a resting place reserved for military veterans, a fitting end for a man who served his country and once stood tall among television's bravest lawmen. Paul Sorenson as Dave Sloan. In the Big Valley, Paul Sorenson portrayed Dave Sloan, the town blacksmith, a character of few words but solid presence. Sloan wasn't a central figure in the Barkley family drama, but he was always there, hammering away in the background, representing the everyday working man who kept the West turning. Much like his character, Paul Sorenson worked steadily, quietly, and often without the recognition he deserved. But unlike Dave Sloan, Paul carried years of pent-up frustration, professional resentment, and personal disappointment, pain that eventually gave way to unexpected redemption. Born on February 16, 1926 in Kenosha, Wisconsin, Sorenson began his acting journey after serving in the U.S. Navy during World War II. He studied drama at the Pasadena Playhouse and quickly found his footing in television's golden age, appearing in over 200 film and television roles across 4 decades. From Gunsmoke and Perry Mason to The Waltons and Dallas, Sorenson became a familiar face to American households, though rarely a name that people remembered. While his resume was long and varied, he was often cast in supporting roles: sheriffs, deputies, judges, or working men, reliable but rarely complex. This career ceiling weighed heavily on Sorenson. Colleagues noted his growing bitterness in the 1960s and 70s as he watched younger or less experienced actors ascend to stardom while he remained in the shadows. Known for his strict professionalism, Sorenson could also be abrupt and confrontational. He was reported to have verbally lashed out at directors and threatened to walk off set during a 1971 shoot over a script dispute. His marriage to actress Jacqueline May faced its own storms. Allegations of an affair with a stuntwoman during his Bonanza guest appearance strained the relationship to the brink. Though the couple reconciled, the wounds lingered for years. Financial issues followed close behind. In 1973, Sorenson was investigated by the IRS for tax discrepancies related to undeclared acting income and alleged business write-offs that raised suspicion. The investigation never led to formal charges, but it further dented his industry reputation. In the 1980s, amid dwindling roles and growing fatigue with the industry, Sorenson began to reevaluate his life. Turning inward, he embraced Christianity and later became a minister. Alongside his wife and son Christian, he co-founded the original Actors Workshop in Orange County, California. There, he found a renewed purpose, mentoring aspiring performers, offering spiritual guidance, and finally feeling seen in a way Hollywood had never offered. Paul Sorenson passed away peacefully on July 17, 2008, at the age of 82. In death, he was remembered not for the bitterness of his mid-career years, but for the wisdom and peace he cultivated later in life. His transformation from a frustrated character actor to a spiritual mentor was perhaps his greatest role, one that, unlike many of his screen appearances, allowed him to lead, uplift, and leave a lasting legacy far beyond the lights of the soundstage. Harlon Ward, as Arthur Clever. As Arthur Clever in The Big Valley, Harlon Ward embodied the type of character who brought a quiet dignity and moral reflection to the frontier. With his calm voice and composed manner, Clever served as a stabilizing presence amid the swirling drama of the Barkley family saga. Ward played him with nuance and restraint, traits that mirrored the actor's own personality, but also concealed a life filled with questions, rumors, and emotional solitude. Born Harlon Ward Lufkin on November 6, 1917, in Los Angeles, California, Ward studied acting at the Pasadena Playhouse, a training ground for many of his contemporaries. He began appearing in films in the early 1940s, often cast in roles of authority: doctors, professors, clergymen, and government officials. His refined demeanor and steady delivery made him a go-to character actor in films like The Fountainhead, The Day the Earth Stood Still, and To Hell and Back. But it was on television, especially in series like Perry Mason, Gunsmoke, and The Virginian, that he became most visible. Despite appearing in over 180 productions throughout his career, Ward never granted more than a handful of interviews and avoided the social circuit of Hollywood. Co-stars often remarked that while he was courteous and professional, he was also intensely private. He would finish his scenes and retreat to his trailer or car without engaging in small talk or attending rap parties. Some who worked with him called it professionalism. Others suspected he was guarding deeper emotional wounds. Rumors quietly circulated in the industry about Ward's romantic life. Never publicly married, he was rumored to have had intimate relationships with both men and women, though no partners were ever officially confirmed. One actress who had worked with him in the 1950s later claimed in a memoir that he had emotionally manipulated her during a long-distance relationship, leading to a psychological breakdown. The studio reportedly covered up the incident at the time, and no public acknowledgement was ever made. Outside of acting, Ward had unusual hobbies. He collected military memorabilia, uniforms, medals, and documents, and had a noted fascination with Cold War espionage and political conspiracy theories. Friends who visited his modest home described walls lined with history books and government reports, many annotated with his own handwritten notes. His intense interest in secret government operations sometimes spilled into conversation, with Ward occasionally making offbeat remarks about surveillance and watch lists that left colleagues unsettled. By the late 1970s, his health had begun to decline. He turned down several roles due to fatigue and was reportedly being treated for high blood pressure. Still, his death from a heart attack on March 13, 1980, came as a shock to those who had worked with him in his final years. He passed away at the age of 62, alone in his Los Angeles home. Harlon Ward was buried with military honors at the Los Angeles National Cemetery, a nod to his patriotic interests and quiet service to American television. To this day, he remains one of the more enigmatic figures of classic TV westerns, a man who brought wisdom and authority to every role he played, yet never fully revealed the man behind the actor. His legacy is one of restraint, intellect, and perhaps a longing for connection he never quite allowed himself to embrace. Mark Tapscott as Bates. Mark Tapscott played Bates, a humble and loyal figure who quietly supported the Barkley family. But unlike his character, Tapscott struggled deeply with rejection. His post-Big Valley career was defined by auditions that went nowhere and financial instability. By the 1980s, he developed a gambling habit that only worsened his situation. His marriage eventually dissolved, and whispers of an unacknowledged child added another layer to his hidden struggles. Mark died alone in 1999 at age 71. His passing was quiet, unlike the desperate, unseen battles he fought during his later years. Bing Russell as Clint/Dan Kelsey. Bing Russell, the father of actor Kurt Russell, appeared in The Big Valley as Clint Dan Kelsey, a classic Western figure marked by grit and composure. Off-screen, Bing's passion wasn't limited to acting. He devoted much of his later life to baseball, founding and managing the Portland Mavericks, a team known for giving outsiders a second chance. His acting career suffered as a result, and he was rumored to have alienated himself from producers and even some family members. A strict father and demanding husband, Bing was both admired and feared by those closest to him. He died in 2003 at age 76, leaving behind a unique dual legacy in both entertainment and sport. Walker Edmiston as Barney the Coroner. Walker Edmiston lent his voice and presence to the Big Valley in a minor role, but his voice acting career spanned decades. Known for iconic work on children's television and animation, he battled the invisible weight of being the man behind the voice. Despite his success, he struggled with feelings of being underappreciated and wrestled with depression. One of his daughters would later speak of a strained relationship marked by emotional distance. Professionally, he clashed with colleagues over creative control and artistic ideals. Edmiston died in 2007 at age 81, quietly and without fanfare, a gifted performer whose pain often stayed just out of view. Bill Quinn as Dr. George Allison. Bill Quinn played Dr. Allison, the town's moral compass. In reality, Quinn was a man haunted by personal losses. The death of his first wife in a car accident left him emotionally wrecked, and though he continued to work, the spark had dimmed. Younger cast members found him difficult, and though respected, he became known for his overbearing advice and unsolicited lectures. Quinn struggled silently with depression and was known to spend nights alone, battling demons he never spoke of. He passed away in 1994 at age 81, his name remembered by loyal fans, even as his sadness remained largely unseen. Joe Higgins as Mortensen. Joe Higgins was a familiar face in television, including his role as Mortensen in The Big Valley. Known for his authoritative voice and stern demeanor, he carried that same energy into his personal life, but not always with positive results. His deeply conservative views created tension with cast and crew, and reports surfaced about controlling behavior at home. After his divorce, he became estranged from his only son due to irreconcilable differences. Despite commercial success, Higgins was often viewed as polarizing. He died in 1998 at age 72, leaving behind a career of contradictions and unresolved relationships. Kevin Hagen as Amos Frell. Kevin Hagen's role as Amos Frell was brief but memorable. He later found greater fame in Little House on the Prairie, but even that couldn't erase the pain from earlier chapters of his life. Known for his quick temper and difficult nature on set, Hagen cycled through troubled relationships, including divorces laced with allegations of emotional abuse. His son publicly criticized him, saying he was a stranger at home despite playing a loving father on TV. In his final years, Hagen battled esophageal cancer, a likely consequence of lifelong smoking. He died in 2005 at age 77. L.Q. Jones as Court. L.Q. Jones brought raw energy and aggression to his role as Court in The Big Valley. In real life, he was just as intense. Colleagues admired his talent but struggled with his uncompromising nature. He frequently clashed with directors, and his family relationships suffered, including estrangement from his son. He was known to carry emotional grudges and never softened his views even into old age. Despite this, he developed a cult following for his work in westerns. Jones died in 2022 at age 94, a complex man remembered as both a maverick and a lightning rod. Royal Dano as Ezra Jesse Blake. Royal Dano had one of the most distinctive voices in Western television. He portrayed hardened characters with depth and authority, including multiple roles in The Big Valley. But his real-life story was one of loss and resilience. He was briefly blacklisted in the McCarthy era, losing out on career opportunities due to political suspicion. Known for his intense personality, he had a history of on-set altercations and a volatile temper. A deeply emotional man, he was haunted by the death of his brother in World War II, which triggered bouts of depression. Dano died of a heart attack in 1994 at age 71, never fully escaping the emotional wounds he carried. The Big Valley brought us stories of strength, justice, and family. But the actors behind those roles lived real lives, ones filled with love, hardship, ambition, and tragedy. While their stories may have ended, the impact they left behind endures with every rewatch, every memory, and every fan who still carries their performances in their heart. Which Big Valley actor had the most surprising life story to you? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into classic television history, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video to keep the legacy of these unforgettable stars alive. Thank you for watching.